not what I believe. Did you know in the early 1800s, missionaries, who were people that came over to set the church up, came to New Zealand and studied Maori life, and they wrote back to London to say, Maori fathers are so tender, loving and caring. They carry baby all day, they look after baby, and I haven't seen any of them lay a hand on the child or mother. Contrast that to England at the time, where domestic violence was actually a social norm among the lower and middle classes, and a woman was literally the property of her husband, and she wasn't allowed to divorce him unless he had beaten her and cheated. So I guess my question to David Seymour is, what is your explanation for the horrific overrepresentation of Māori in all of these statistics? Because we know from the history records that domestic violence was not a social norm for Māori communities. Because I can't think of a logical answer that you could give me that doesn't accept the fact that colonisation and the stripping of tino rangatiratanga from these hapu has contributed significantly to the statistics that we're in today.
What? So we weren't the bad guys?
That the Crown was somehow honourable in its determination to take away our lands, our lives, and our power. But to have a notion of an honourable colonisation, of an honourable disposition, is fundamentally a contradiction in terms.
Toitu te whenua, toitu te mana, toitu te mana motu hake!
So I figured Columbus got lost because he was sailing backwards. But either way, when he began what became the centuries-long dispossession of indigenous peoples, Europe had to invent reasons or justifications for dispossessing innocent peoples who had done them no harm and posed no threat. And part of that need to invent a dispossessable other was to create racialized distinctions in which certain people are inherently inferior and therefore deserve to be dispossessed. And one of those most influential inventions was the creation of what became known as a warrior race. That there were certain peoples in the world who were born to fight, to kill, and were naturally violent.
What? So we weren't the bad guys?
And one of the earliest examples by a proto-anthropologist from Europe said this of Maori people: blood for blood is the one law which they have, and revenge is the precious gift transferred from ferocious father to ferocious. And so they created this image of a people who were born violent, a racialized picture of people in order to dispossess them.
What? So we weren't the bad guys?
Said that Alan Duff's famous book and movie, Once Were Warriors, would more appropriately be called Once Were Gardeners. Or if you're Ngāti Kahungunu, once and always were lovers. And those images are as inaccurate as the images that we once were warriors. And in Alan Duff's book, Once Were Warriors, there's a really stark, frightening line where Jake the Muss talks about his ancestors, and he said that's all our people did. Us Maoris fought each other all the time, hated each other.
What? So we weren't the bad guys?
I think one of the things I'm looking into at the moment is the role of women in Te Ao Māori, as it was at the time when the first Europeans arrived. A lot of big surprises there. You look into the documents and you find, for example, the Europeans universally saying women and children are not struck. They're not hit. Domestic violence was almost unheard of, and these Europeans were very surprised by that, because at that same time in Europe, there was the doctrine of coverture, where a man was legally covered, literally covered his wife and his children. So the man and the wife and the children were one legal person. So it meant the women didn't have legal rights and the kids didn't have legal rights as individuals. That's what the emancipation of women was all about, was changing that particular doctrine that had been around in Europe for quite a long time. And at the same time, among Māori, that wasn't the case. So in many parts of the country, you had really strong Māori leaders. The East Coast, where I'm from, is one of the striking examples. And Apirana Mahuka wrote a brilliant thesis about Ngā Wahine Kai Hau Tū o Ngāti Porou. It's the women leaders of Ngāti Porou. And meeting houses named after them, kin groups named after them. They're legendary. Eruera Sterling, who was my mentor, his mother, Mihiko Tukutuku, total legend. She was, the stories about her are just fantastic. Up north, the same. So many women, powerful women. And as you go around the country and you study tribal history, you find powerful women everywhere, actually. And this thing about kids not being struck, a lack of domestic violence, women having the capacity to play leadership roles, that's been almost edited out of our history. There's many urban Māori today who probably believe the once were warriors myth, that if you're going to be a bro, a strong Māori warrior type male, you striking and hitting and abusing women and children is part of that. Absolutely not, according to tikanga. Absolutely not. It's a really tragic kind of colonial myth. Really tragic. That sort of stuff came in because at that stage, the use of physical discipline for women and kids was common in Britain. And it wasn't here. And so I can give you about 30 different European, Marsden, Taylor, Shortland, the list goes on, and they're all saying the same thing. They're saying, the women are not, and the children are not struck. You've got kids 4 years old going to a hui, asking questions of the old people and being answered and so on. A really different picture of domestic life than we now have. And so women, I think, Hone Sadler, who was a key player in the Ngāpuhi claim, he wrote a thesis about powerful women leaders in the north. So the role of women, and women fought, Māori women also fought for suffrage. And the fact that they had legal property rights and rights to leadership at a time when European women didn't have them, I think, must have added impetus must have helped, set the path for New Zealand becoming the first country in the world to give those rights to women legally.
Yeah, okay, now we've seen that. I can just say for myself as a young fella growing up here in Tāmaki Makaurau, our home there in Te Aratu North, it got a bit heated at times, and I can even say my dad, he got a bit violent, but there is no excuse. But just to listen to the video and to understand and to know that in our culture, our tipuna, we weren't a people of domestic violence. Something must have happened. And, I've forgiven my dad of whatever things that he did in our home, because I know within his heart all he had was a love for the whole of our whanau. And I can remember all the times that my dad carried our whanau on his back day and night. He'd go and to work before the sun came up, hours before the sun came up, and he'd come home hours before the sun had already gone down, and he'd be in our washroom. He'd be washing our clothes and hanging our clothes up in the middle of the night. And pretty much as a young fella growing up, my dad was the head dishwasher in the family, and he did all the ladies' jobs. And man, he just had a great love for his whanau. And just listening to Anne Salmon, Dane Anne, and talking about the writings of Maori fathers holding their babies all day and nurturing them. And, I saw a lot of that with my father. Just that my dad, he wasn't a very good communicator. He was a very intelligent guy, but he was very reserved. So, but like I like a lot of Maori who pretty much drank the Kool-Aid that was given to us by our colonizers. But we can't be too harsh on ourselves. This brainwashing was pretty much came to us through our education systems. It came through our history books, in our just communities. And I remember moving to the country as a young boy, and we used to, and this was said in our whānaus and believed, and we'd always talk about the clever Pākehās and the dumb Maoris, and we pretty much drank the Kool-Aid. But as history is coming, as we go through history, we're starting to find out a lot of mistruths about our history. And that was the main reason why I produced this video, was to help push back on a few myths and lies that have been perpetrated on the Maori people, on all the indigenous peoples, in the name of having our colonizers sort of like justify them being able to colonize us, because we're a savage and we're a lower class people, and we need to be civilized and given a lot of their culture. And that was their reasoning. But all in all, we know what they wanted to do in the end. It was just to dispossess us of our lands and our power to govern ourselves. And gotta say that that kind of thing is still happening today. There's a whole lot of liars out there. There's a whole lot of saviors. They're just wolves dressed in sheep's clothes. But if there's a couple of quotes that, there's one I love Bob Marley, and it helped me out a lot when I was growing up, trying to just get through life. And one of the quotes from a song, redemption song, it's emancipate yourselves from mental slavery, none but ourselves can free our minds. And that just gave me the first inkling of self-determination. It's a lot of what happens outside there happens because of what is happening in your mind. And the other thought is from a book. I think it's from Stephen A. Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And he's quoting somebody, And the quote goes something like this. If we are in a problem, we can't get out of the problem with the same thinking that we got into the problem. Like to get out of a problem that we're in, we need to think at a higher level to get out of it. And I think that's what us Maori are doing. I'm so impressed with the leadership of our Maori people, and when they're getting bashed so hard by the right, I think to myself, we're heading down the right track. Because if we were not doing anything of significance, they wouldn't even care. So kia kaha, and just remember, the myth that, we aren't a violent people. We are a people that had a rich and noble heritage, and that we are able to gain our own rangatiratanga. We are able to make decisions for our own selves, and I think that's what scares the other side. It's we're getting to the point where we've been there for a while. We've been able to look after ourselves. The government doesn't want us to succeed. They want to, because when we succeed, we're getting to that point where we are able to look after ourselves, and they don't want that. They want to look after us because the power that they have is in looking after us. So that's all I've got for this video. So tēnā koe. Toi tū te whenua, toi tū te mana motu hake!